There comes a quiet moment in a person's life when the desire to be seen begins to fade, not dramatically, not with rebellion or noise, but slowly, almost mysteriously. The individual who once sought recognition, approval, and affirmation from the world begins to feel a strange fatigue. The attention that once felt nourishing now feels exhausting, the applause sounds hollow, the conversations seem shallow. And without fully understanding why, the soul begins to withdraw. To the outside observer, this withdrawal may appear like loneliness, like defeat, or even like a loss of confidence. Society often assumes that visibility is the ultimate measure of existence. If one is not being noticed, admired, or validated, then something must be wrong. But the inner life does not follow the rules of the crowd. What looks like retreat is often a profound psychological movement inward. Every person who lives among others must develop a kind of social mask. This mask allows us to function in the world. It helps us adapt, cooperate, and belong. We learn how to speak, how to behave, and how to present ourselves in ways that will be accepted. Over time, this mask becomes so familiar that we forget it is a mask at all. We begin to mistake it for our real face. Yet the psyche is not satisfied with living only through appearances. Beneath the surface, something deeper continues to grow and evolve. And there comes a stage in life when that deeper center begins to call our attention away from the outer world. Suddenly, the energy that once flowed towards social recognition begins to flow inward. The individual feels a pull towards solitude, reflection, and silence. This is not a rejection of the world, but a necessary return to the inner landscape. The human soul cannot mature while it is constantly performing. There must be moments when the stage lights dim and the actor steps away from the role. In that quiet space, a person begins to ask questions that were once ignored. Who am I when no one is watching? What part of me has been hidden beneath all these expectations? At first, these questions feel unsettling. Without the familiar identity provided by the outside world, one may feel temporarily lost. The old motivations weaken. The desire to impress others disappears. Even the need to explain oneself begins to fade, but this apparent emptiness is not a void. It is an opening. Within that opening, the deeper self begins to speak, not with loud commands, but with subtle feelings, dreams, intuitions, and quiet realizations. The individual starts to recognize that much of life was previously lived according to borrowed values and borrowed identities. And slowly, a more authentic center of personality begins to emerge. So when a person no longer wishes to be seen, it may not be because they are disappearing from life. It may be because, for the first time, they are beginning to encounter themselves, and every true transformation begins in that unseen place. There comes a moment in the life of many individuals when the image they have carefully built for the world begins to feel unbearably heavy. For years, perhaps even decades, they have carried it faithfully. They learned how to behave in ways that would be praised, admired, and accepted. They shaped their words, their expressions, and even their ambitions according to what the world seemed to reward. And at first, this construction feels natural, even necessary. After all, to live among others requires adaptation. But what begins as adaptation can slowly become imprisonment. The image we present to the world often grows stronger than the person behind it. We invest so much energy into maintaining this outer identity that we rarely stop to ask whether it truly belongs to us. We perform roles that society applauds: the successful one, the strong one, the agreeable one, the wise one, the one who never falters. And with every compliment or approval we receive, the mask tightens. Yet the psyche cannot indefinitely tolerate a life lived entirely on the surface. Beneath the polished exterior, the deeper layers of the self continue to exist, waiting patiently to be acknowledged. They observe silently as the outer personality moves through life, fulfilling expectations that were often inherited rather than chosen. Eventually, something begins to fracture. At first, the change is subtle. The admiration of others no longer brings the same satisfaction. Praise feels strangely distant, as if it is being directed towards someone else. The identity that once seemed so solid begins to feel strangely hollow. A quiet question begins to echo within the individual. Is this truly me? This question can be deeply unsettling because it threatens the entire structure upon which one's life has been built. To admit that the persona, the social image, has been mistaken for the true self is to confront the possibility that much of one's life has been lived in service of something artificial. And so, a peculiar exhaustion sets in. The individual grows tired of performing, tired of explaining themselves through roles and labels, tired of maintaining an image that no longer reflects the inner reality. What once felt like strength now feels like strain. The applause of the world becomes a reminder of a character that must constantly be played. It is at this point that many people begin to withdraw from visibility, not because they have lost their worth, but because they can no longer tolerate the distance between who they appear to be and who they actually are. The mask, once a useful tool, now becomes an obstacle. When this collapse begins, it can feel disorienting. The familiar sense of identity dissolves, leaving a strange psychological emptiness. Yet this emptiness is not merely loss. It is also the clearing of space. When the false structure begins to fall away, something more authentic finally has the opportunity to emerge. The individual slowly realizes that they do not need to live as a reflection of the world's expectations. There is a deeper center within the psyche, one that cannot be defined by applause or recognition. And when a person finally recognizes the difference between the mask and the face behind it, the performance can no longer continue. Once the outer image begins to crumble and the energy that once sustained it withdraws, a person often finds themselves standing in a silence they have never truly experienced before. The noise of expectations fades, the performance weakens, and in that quiet space, something long hidden begins to stir. It is here that the individual encounters a part of themselves that has been waiting patiently in the background of their life. Every human being carries within them aspects of the personality that were never allowed to enter the light of social approval. From an early age we learn which traits are welcomed and which are rejected. The qualities that bring praise are cultivated and displayed, while the ones that provoke criticism, discomfort, or shame are pushed aside. They are buried deep within the psyche, not destroyed, but simply hidden from view. Over time, these rejected elements form a hidden companion within us. They contain impulses, emotions, memories, and potentials that were never given a place in the conscious personality. For many years, they remain out of sight, while the person continues to live through the identity that the world recognizes. But when the desire to be seen fades and the outer persona weakens, the walls that once kept these hidden parts at bay begin to thin. The individual who withdraws from constant visibility often does so because something within them demands attention, something that cannot be confronted while the eyes of the world are watching. In solitude, the psyche begins to reveal what has long been concealed. At first, this encounter can feel unsettling. The person may notice emotions they once avoided, anger that was suppressed in order to appear kind, ambition that was denied in order to appear humble, vulnerability that was hidden in order to appear strong. They may discover fears they never admitted, desires they never allowed themselves to acknowledge, and contradictions that challenge the image they once believed to be their identity. This hidden dimension of the self is not merely a collection of flaws. it is also a reservoir of vitality and truth. Within it lie forgotten strengths, creativity, courage, and instinctive wisdom that were sacrificed in the effort to maintain social acceptance. Yet because these elements were rejected, they now appear unfamiliar, sometimes even threatening. This is why many people instinctively retreat from the gaze of others during this phase of life. To confront these deeper layers of the psyche requires honesty, patience, and the freedom to explore without judgment. The individual senses that this inner work cannot be performed on a public stage. Silence becomes a kind of sanctuary. In that quiet space, one begins to observe the hidden movements of the soul. Dreams grow more vivid. Thoughts become more reflective. The individual starts to recognize patterns in their behavior, old wounds that shaped their choices, and hidden motivations that once operated in the shadows. Slowly, something remarkable begins to happen. The parts of the self that were once rejected begin to lose their threatening appearance. Instead of enemies, they reveal themselves as neglected aspects of the personality seeking recognition. What once seemed dark becomes understandable, and what once felt chaotic begins to find its rightful place within the whole. Through this process, the individual moves closer to psychological wholeness. They are no longer divided between the image they show the world and the hidden reality they once denied. And it is only when a person has the courage to meet what was hidden within them that they begin to discover the depth of who they truly are. After a person has withdrawn from the noise of constant visibility, after the carefully constructed image has begun to fall away, and after the hidden dimensions of the psyche have slowly revealed themselves, there comes a stage that is often misunderstood. From the outside, it may still appear as absence. The individual may remain quiet, distant from the roles they once played, less concerned with recognition, less interested in being noticed. To many observers, it seems as though nothing is happening, but inwardly, something profound is taking place. Human transformation rarely occurs under bright lights. Just as nature performs its most important work beneath the surface of the earth, the psyche also requires a period of invisibility in order to reorganize itself. When a seed is planted in the soil, it disappears completely from sight. To someone who does not understand the process, it might seem as though the seed has simply vanished. Yet beneath the ground, an extraordinary movement has begun. The old form dissolves, so that a new form can emerge. The same pattern often unfolds in the inner life. Once the individual has confronted the false identities they carried and has begun to face the hidden aspects of their own nature, the psyche enters a stage of quiet reconstruction. The personality is no longer defined solely by the expectations of others, yet it has not fully formed its new center of gravity. There is a period of uncertainty, a kind of psychological twilight in which the old structures are gone, but the new ones are still taking shape. During this time, many people feel tempted to rush back into visibility. The world encourages constant activity, constant expression, constant presence. Silence is often mistaken for weakness, and solitude is sometimes interpreted as failure. Yet the deeper self understands that growth cannot be forced. The individual who allows this invisible phase to unfold with patience begins to notice subtle changes within themselves. Their reactions become calmer. Their thoughts gain clarity. The need to prove themselves to others slowly loses its power. They begin to act not from the pressure of expectations, but from an inner sense of alignment. What once required effort now begins to feel natural. Decisions are no longer guided solely by the desire for approval, but by a quiet recognition of what feels true. The individual becomes less concerned with how they appear and more attentive to the integrity of their inner life. And when this inner reorganization reaches maturity, something unexpected happens. The person may eventually return to the world, but they do so differently than before. They are no longer driven by the restless need to be seen, admired, or validated. Instead, they move through life with a kind of quiet presence. They may speak, create, lead, or contribute as they once did, but the source of their actions has changed. Their identity is no longer built upon fragile external images. It arises from a deeper center that has been shaped in silence. In this way, the period of invisibility reveals its true meaning. It was never about disappearing from life. It was about allowing the soul the time and space it needed to become whole. And when a person returns from that unseen place, they no longer seek the light because they have become it.